Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Can Atheists Know God? In this video, we're going to be looking at the question, can atheists know of God's power? So, in this series, we're examining the question of whether God could prove his properties even if he manifested himself before an atheist, willing to do anything to convince the atheist that he was God. Imagine that you do not believe in God. One day, your friend Bob walks up to you and says he has a secret he wants to tell you. He's actually an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God. Maybe the Christian God, maybe Allah, pick your favorite tradition. He's aware that you're a non-believer, and he really wants to save your soul. So he's willing to do anything in his power to prove that, in fact, he is all good, all powerful, and all knowing. Is there anything you can ask him to do that will prove these properties of God? Now, in this video, we're going to look at whether God could prove that he is omnipotent. In other words, whether or not could ever be justified in believing that some individual was omnipotent. Before getting into the argument, you can pause the video and think, what would you ask Bob to do to show that he's all-powerful? Not just very powerful, or magical, or beyond the understanding of science, but completely all-powerful, able to do anything. Think about that for a sec. Now, an initial reaction might be to say, ask Bob to do something that would be generally impossible for a human. Say, fly into the sky without any support, take off his head and reattach it, create an exact clone of himself. While doing any of these things might give you strong evidence that Bob was not human, it wouldn't follow that Bob was a god. He could be a particularly powerful alien or a very talented stage magician. Perhaps then you should ask Bob to do something a bit more impressive. Say, take you back to the age of the dinosaurs, or transport you both safely to the surface of the sun, shrink you down to the size of a pea. These seem impossible for a stage magician to replicate, and even an alien that did so would seem very, very powerful. However, you wouldn't be able to tell if Bob is actually doing these things or simply creating the illusion that he's doing them. If Bob is powerful enough to time travel, he very well may be powerful enough to alter your perception, or even your beliefs. In fact, altering your perception seems like a much easier thing to do than traveling in time. Humans have found many ways to alter the perception of others, but no good ways to travel in time yet. So it seems like the most likely explanation of Bob appearing to do these things is that he's altering your perceptions, not the reality of the world. It's not only possible that Bob is altering your perception if he's very powerful, it's also probably the most likely explanation. That's not to say that he definitely is, just that you wouldn't be justified in saying this creature that can do absolutely everything clearly isn't just altering my perception, they are actually doing the things they're claiming to. You might go a step further and ask Bob to do something truly powerful, destroy the entire universe and remake it, change the laws of physics, alter the way that math or logic works, or even prolong your life indefinitely, to see them do absolutely everything possible. So make you live a long, long life, and throughout that life, experience everything that's possible and experience that they can do all of those things. Someone that could do such things seems very powerful indeed, and perhaps omnipotent. The problem again, though, is that anyone that is so powerful could easily alter your perceptions to simply make it appear that they destroyed the world and recreated it, make time appear longer than it was, or force you to form beliefs that you had experienced all of the things that they could do. You might think you're justified in claiming that Bob is at least very powerful, powerful enough to alter your perceptions completely, to essentially put you in the matrix. But there's no way to distinguish between someone that's truly omnipotent and someone that's simply powerful enough to put you in the matrix. It's important to recognize that this isn't a skeptical argument that you are in the matrix right now, but rather to say that someone that is powerful enough to create the universe is certainly powerful enough to create the matrix, or to put you in a dream, to put you to sleep and change your dreams a little bit. That seems like something that people could conceivably do, let alone an all-powerful God. If someone is powerful enough to do anything, they're certainly powerful enough to create a simulation. And so someone that's powerful enough to create a simulation is all you can really prove or be confident to believe that they are doing. You might be able to be confident Bob was very powerful, but it's unlikely you can prove that he's not simply powerful enough to create a simulation. In fact, that really seems more likely, given that it would be much easier to do that than to do absolutely anything. This gives a clear argument against the justification for believing in God's power. There's no way for you to determine whether someone that claims to be God is simply able to alter your perceptions and beliefs, or they're actually able to do the things they claim. In fact, it seems more likely that Bob would be able to alter your perceptions and beliefs, something that humans are capable of doing up to a certain degree, or nearly capable of doing, then Bob would be able to change things like the laws of mathematics or logic, things that we don't even know are possible for an omnipotent being. This means that you cannot be justified in believing that Bob is omnipotent, even if he appears to be able to do absolutely everything you ask. He might change your beliefs to think that you are justified, but that would not actually make you justified, any more than a brain tumor causing you to believe in leprechauns would make those beliefs or your belief in leprechauns justified. It's important to note that this is an epistemic argument. This argument claims that even assuming that God exists, you could never know that he does, because no matter what he did, your belief in his omnipotence would be unjustified, as you could never tell that he was not merely altering your perceptions or beliefs instead of the actual world. It is important to distinguish between this and a fully skeptical argument, because in this case we're saying that we have seen an individual that is capable of creating the matrix. And so it's not that, oh, maybe it's that these skeptical scenarios aren't possible. We've seen that they are possible, that they can be done, and there's an individual that could do them. And so we're not saying you're in the matrix or there's this vague possibility. We're saying we have right standing in front of you someone that can create the matrix. You need to be completely convinced that they're not doing it right now. This argument is not to show that God does not exist, but rather to show that even if he did, you could never have justified knowledge of it. Now, there are two important caveats to add to this argument. First, if you have a solid proof that Bob is all good, and that goodness requires honesty, and therefore would not deceive you, you may have a good justification for the claim that he is all-powerful, simply because he says so. Second, if you have a non-empirical proof, something not presented out in the world, that an all-good, all-powerful God exists, and that such a God would not allow a creature like Bob to exist, such as one of the ontological arguments, you might think that anything that appears all-powerful must be God. However, to the first point, as we'll see in the fourth video in this series, there is no such empirical proof available. It is very, very difficult to prove God's goodness, if not impossible. And to the second point, as we have shown extensively on this channel with over 100 objections, the ontological arguments are wholly unconvincing and fallacious. Not to mention that many religious traditions think that Satan, or some embodiment of evil, is exactly the kind of individual that would have the power to deceive in such a way. In other words, how do you know that Bob is God and not Satan? Now, a big thank you to Antoine MP1 for supporting Carneades.org on Patreon since 2020. You too can support the channel and get access to Patreon exclusive posts for just $2 a month, less than the price of buying me a used book. If you want to support the public philosophy, please, please, please do consider donating. Any donation does really help. What do you think? Is there anything Bob could do that could justify a belief that he is God and not an evil deceiver? That he is actually an all-powerful and not just very good at manipulating perception and belief? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you like this video. Hit that notification bell if you want to make sure you see more and don't miss the next videos in this series where we will look at omniscience and omnibenevolence. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org and stay skeptical, everybody.